I will say one thing related to the flag, is my father served at D-Day Normandy invasion 75 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and it was, it's really something hard to believe, 75 years, you know? But
Something to
anyways,
be really
thank you.
proud of.
Yeah, thank you for all those who served. We'll start with our review of the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any questions or additions to the minutes?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion. Okay, I'll second the motion.
Mitchell, second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we, just to correct on the agenda, we did not have an executive session before tonight's meeting, but there possibly will be one before the adjournment. Any correspondence? Yes, kind of strange. Well, it's just like lately that there hasn't been a lot coming in.
No, I haven't
Okay.
heard anything.
Treasurer's report. What do we got?
Our current balance is $11,660.32. And our bills that we have for tonight, KLH Engineering, $400. Sherry Crawford, $170.29. Costello, Blonsky, Costello and Lecky is $400, which is a total of $970.29. Beyond that, I don't know a whole lot. Other than-
Okay. Do we hear a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
I'll make a motion to accept it. Once again, I'll second.
All right, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Eric?
The other thing I've been involved with is really back and forth on the matters of the arrangement for the appraisals and letting Mr. Churchill, who's here tonight, know that at the last meeting that the board did vote to retain his services as well as his associate, who we met with a couple weeks back, a couple months back, excuse me. So I'll just, if I could, in lieu of my report, I would prefer to let Scott give you a report on what they've been doing. Scott?
Okay, first of all, we got the right parcel for the Sabo property. So we'll be working on that. That will be fairly straightforward, so that won't be a very difficult one. On the other report, I'll just give you some highlights of what we've done so far. We've researched, actually Pete Kulzer, my associate, he's been researching large parcel sales and has found positive values for public sewer versus private. He'll continue to do that. He's going to look into, maybe even looking into some sales in Allegheny County, just because that's, there's a lot of subdivisions that we can use to compare. And I've been working on more of a micro approach. I did some research on the Chartiers Route 18 Henderson Road neighborhood where they did add sewer a few years back, and in both average and median statistics I found a positive impact, as well as taking some specific house sales and then comparing them, and I found positive impact there as well. In McDonald, I also researched sales, although I researched sales through the West Penn MLS. And if I used all the sales over a time period, not separating price, there wasn't much of a difference, so like the real high-end properties. But if I dropped it to like a cap of 150,000 and then did an analysis, it did show an impact. So what I think is some of the higher priced properties, it doesn't really matter. Like if you're paying $500,000-$600,000 for a house, if you have sewer, you're going to put a sound mound or whatever. It's not as much of an impact as it is on the lower priced properties. And I did have a a matched pair analysis that showed a positive impact. I also was working with some sales in Mount Pleasant on the Lakeview Estates. There's some parcels, actually they're larger parcel houses, but they're similar in age and similar in size to the houses in Lakeview, and was able to find a positive impact there as well. I would also ask if anybody in the board has any connections with the HOA group there. Do you know anybody on there? Because I've been trying. Pardon?
The homeowners.
Yeah, the homeowners association. Yeah. If I could talk to someone there, I tried to go online and it's like a password protected. So if anybody has, if not, I'll find another avenue.
You're referring to Cherry Valley Estates?
Cherry Valley Estates, yeah, the
Yeah.
homeowners.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone, I mean, I see them come to meetings once in a while, township meetings,
Mhm.
but,
I can find out.
If you could,
Certainly.
yeah, I'd like to talk to them.
I know several people that live down
And then just a couple of questions. So this report we're basically creating from scratch. I mean, there wasn't really a template to use. We did look to see if we could find any type of similar studies, but we were not able to. When you are going to submit this data to your homeowners, would you like to have, I mean, there'll be the larger report, but if we did almost a one-page type of synopsis of the report that would be much more directed, like to specific bullet points that would reference the larger report, so you could send that to your homeowners, would that be something that you guys would be interested in?
I think that would be helpful when the time comes, since we're going to, the plan is to send a letter to the homeowners that
Right.
would be affected once we have this data. So I think something that would be more of a bullet, simpler to understand than a big long report that does all the analysis. Now, we're going to still want the report.
Of course,
for
of course.
any potential issues later, but I think it's good to hear that Scott's coming up with empirical data that basically confirms what we've been saying all along, and it sounds like is going to be consistent with what we've believed all along. So that is good to hear.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
What are the fees going to be incurred by the homeowners for like the tapping fees or?
That's variable still. It's going to depend on the total cost of the project. I don't know. Do we have a rough range on that, Brian?
No, I
Not
don't think
even
we
that.
can.
No, that's all right. Sorry, I just wondered if
Funded.
I was just wondering if that
really,
was.
it reflects on funding and grants.
Yeah, it's
Got it.
it's just hard to tell at this point.
Okay.
Just another couple quick comments though on my end. Were you done, Scott? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't want to step on you there. We do need to get the agreements signed for them to do this work. We obviously agreed to do so with a public vote on it, but there are agreements that they'd like to have signed. Did you bring those with you, Scott? Okay, those were corrected. There were some references earlier, I believe, to this being Mount Pleasant Township instead of the authority.
Yes.
Those have been corrected. And then I know you're looking for your initial payments. You can work at it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really where we stand on that. Now, I'm obviously not in a position to do much more with this until this all gets done. But once it does, then I think we can move into the letters that we've talked about. And then after the letters go out, which is going to be more or less, this is it, last chance, folks, then it's going to have to proceed with the other two.
So in the discussion last month, was there a time frame on what we were going to hear back from Scott so that we can go to the letters?
Your agreement indicated what, 90 days?
Yeah, I would ask if we could just make it, if we could get this final reports to you by the next board meeting, would that be sufficient, beginning of July?
The final report?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be great if we could have it next month.
Yeah, that's kind of what the target is for us.
So then July, that would give you 2 months roughly to get the letters and.
You know, I wasn't really, we hadn't worked out the logistics of who's doing the letters, but, I mean, I can certainly, I think I
Yeah.
already did draft one a while ago. We might need
I'm
to
just thinking from a calendar,
take-
from a timeline, if
But
it
yeah.
took us 2 months to get them out, that's, we're into September.
I think we should be able to get them out between July and August and leave a window for a response by September at the very latest. And then whoever hasn't responded favorably by then that's when we have to within a reasonable period of time after that, I think, pull the trigger on putting it into eminent domain. I think that we should, in the interim, just move forward with eminent domain on the parcel that we need to acquire completely, not just the right of way. I think we're going to have to take that approach on that property from prior discussions. And I think that one may be the one that will end up with some litigation, so let's not delay it. So would we be looking at the same time frame, Scott, for that?
Mhm.
Okay. So next month, we'll be in a position, I think, first to discuss some of this in executive session because of the potential litigation and the acquisition of property being involved, but then make some on the record, if you will, decisions as to proceeding. Okay.
Can I ask one more question? Now, do you need me to submit those, the proposals to the board to get the, can you, or do you want to do that? The proposals that you need to sign for the appraisals?
Oh, I guess, Paul, you would sign those typically as the chairman.
Well, why don't I have your email, I'll email them to you, actually, when I get back to my office tonight.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then if you could take care of those, that would be great. All right, good.
And then, did you want something other than that in terms of making the payment? You said about an invoice?
We need some type of an invoice or something to make.
I need an invoice. I'll put an
Okay.
invoice with the proposal.
Okay, that'll make it easier then.
Yes.
Okay,
All right?
yep, good.
We're good.
You don't need
Thanks.
to hang around,
And then
thank you.
next month, we'll talk about the wastewater treatment area. Because
Oh, that's another appraisal, right, that'll be
Right.
another, got it. And I have all your emails now, so I'll keep in touch with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we appreciate you coming out.
Hey, no problem.
Report.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get back to you, because this is the wrong number, wrong person.
He's aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah, because he sent an email out on Monday that he needed to get into a building. I'm like, there's no building on the property. So when I come back to the office today, I checked it out on Google, and
Okay.
there's no building, and he
Yeah, I
says,
was
yeah,
curious
it's wrong.
about that.
Wrong
You don't
parcel.
need this one? You have-
No, I don't know that. So-
I'm not, as I kind of alluded to, as familiar with the area as you guys are.
Well, sure.
So I was like, I didn't realize that until it was brought to my attention earlier today.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought maybe it was just some little shed or something over there.
That's what I
Hill
thought,
or
even when I
something.
didn't know about.
I knew right away because I know the area.
Yeah, you know it real well, yeah. That's your neck of the woods.
So if we send letters out in August, you were saying September, October for response, or?
Well, I think we could send the letters out in July. We're gonna have our meeting at the beginning of July,
Yep.
right? If he has everything ready for us at that point, we can get the letters put together and out that month. And, you know, then the question is, how long do you want to allow for a response? Probably a couple of weeks, I would say. But if we got them up quick enough at the beginning of the month, that could mean August, but at the very worst, I think it means September. That at that point, we say, okay, everybody that is going to respond to us has, everybody else we have to assume isn't. And then we move forward with the legal avenues.
September 1st is a Saturday, then there's Labor Day. So if you want to do it by August 31st, or August 30th is a Friday.
Set a deadline in the letter that, you know, if we have not heard from you by this date, you know, please be advised that we will be proceeding with eminent domain. And again, we want to discourage that. If there's anybody actually watching TV right now, we want to discourage that, because all it does is adds to your cost and adds to the project cost, which ultimately reflects in higher rates.
Sure.
And delays.
Delays. Yeah.
Not necessarily delays. Once we do the eminent domain, we basically have the right to proceed. It's just a question of whether we're fighting over value at that point.
Okay, so you mean would be able
It's
to
like,
move forward on a piece of property?
yeah, you get to take the car home and then you negotiate the price later.
Oh,
Think of it that way. Okay?
So back on the Zeba Road property, since the wrong tax number was on there, Can we verify which is the right number? Like, this one's ending in 003. I don't know if you have anything available to.
It was in the twos.
Yep,
The other one.
two?
Yeah, it was like 2-2, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have that, but I remember seeing it some reason. I don't know why I don't have it. That was in what?
The proposal?
Yeah. No, not that one. The other one I have it.
That one said 003.
Yeah, it was twos.
03.
It was twos. I think it was like, it was a higher number, not two. I guess I'm not much help. I don't-
When
For some
you're
reason I
referring
was-
to on his proposal.
Yes, I just want to make sure, since there's a discrepancy there, that we don't overlook it again.
Well, when he sends it for signature, presumably he'll copy everybody, or at least me. But if he doesn't, send it to me or
Okay,
whatever, let's
he's
make
gonna
sure
send it
it's
to me, and
right.
that's why I'm asking what the
Yeah.
right number is.
I don't know.
Okay.
Offhand, I don't
We'll
know
look.
for sure. We,
I don't know. I'd seen it. Kathy had it for me. Actually, I don't know
So
where.
this is the wrong number here.
I don't know why I had it.
might be able to find that on the website.
So this would be the property that is incorrect.
She did.
So, let me see, this services.
Yeah, it's harder when you're not at your desk.
That is design is not record. You're right, not record. Well, you know
His
what?
email,
Jim brings up a
did he
good
copy
point.
Scott on his email earlier?
I'll wait till you
His
can.
email work.
So if you look on your list from your report, on the not recommended list, about 6 or 8 down, it says 03. And I'm pretty sure that was the only property they requested a revision on.
I'm sorry, to go back to his email earlier today has what Scott thinks is the correct number, and it is different than what was on the paper. So that does appear to be a correction.
So what's it end in?
200,
200.
2200.
I can, after I get my report, I can verify. I'll look it up.
Okay, yeah, if you would, please, thank you. Since there's multiple pieces there, he was aware that the one piece sold to Mark West, and he kept referring to it as the Mark West property.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you copied this email earlier.
Yeah.
That's the number they think it is.
All right, so Eric, we got you pretty well squared away with.
Right, the only other thing that came up was the question about the right to know that I think I answered. And apparently that
Mhm.
didn't get pursued here tonight, so.
Yeah, I don't see anyone, so.
But, I mean, just to reiterate, if there, again, anybody in TV land,
Hey, let's
those are to
go.
be written requests, and they are for existing documents.
Okay.
You do not create documents or answer interrogatories, you just turn over existing documents.
So do I hear a motion to accept the solicitor's report?
I'll make a motion to accept this.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Mr. Bryan has a
Okay.
report tonight.
I circulated my written report. The first thing on the project, what we've been spending most of our time on, and we're still trying to wrap up, we're in the final stages, is the resubmission to the township and to the conservation district on the NPDS stormwater and ENS permitting. I've highlighted a little bit of the background and kind of the struggles we're having and why we are at where we're at. I'll just run through this real fast. The initial stormwater management submission was created in February of 2016 before the project was delayed. At that time, the only missing piece we had was the McCarroll Road pump station. And the submission was made to the township, but never to the conservation district, where we had met with them, we had talked to them. And at the time, the submission was to be the wastewater treatment plant. A portion of the submission was for the sewer lines. And then the McCarroll Road pump station, primarily because they had the federal funded project there that they wanted to make sure that we were not impacting. When we resubmitted, I guess jumping forward, after the project got moving again, the pump station site got finalized. We completed the stormwater management calculations and application for the McCarroll Road pump station, and we did our submission to the township and to the conservation district. The township responded with comments which we're addressing, but they went with our same understanding as the conservation district. All the pump stations except for McCarroll Road received a small project exemption due to the amount of impervious area that would be created. Unfortunately, the conservation district changed their stance and they want full stormwater management permitting on all sites. So we went from 2 sites, the wastewater treatment plant and the McCarroll Road pump station, to now 5 sites. So we have been working through Westland, Allison, and Southview pump station stormwater management, full permitting submission. So if any of you saw the packet that was submitted last time, we're doing all that for the other 3 sites.
Is this common to all projects, wastewater treatment projects, or is it just our specific project that they're looking at?
I think it is common to their new regulations and what they expect to see to verify that you're complying with stormwater management.
Yeah, that was my question. I mean, is it a new regulation?
Yes.
Occurred since 2016?
I
And
would-
when we're doing this today from scratch, it would have to be done.
I would say in general, in the last 3 years, the regulations overall for stormwater management and ENS have progressed and become way more robust.
I see Sherry nodding her head
And
over there.
in this case, those 3 sites, it's likely more an interpretation of, and back then, there weren't as many guidelines, weren't so many restrictions. They looked at those small pump stations and said, we don't need to see it for these sites. Well, now that the guidelines and the restrictions are so much greater, they want to see full-blown applications.
Well, that was my only concern, that maybe someone was just doing this on a whim. We had new people calling the shots down there, and did we have any recourse to go back and say, hey, well, look, back in 16,
We did. So we contacted the conservation district. We told them the situation, went through the history, and the representative there has been involved, and he knows the project.
Okay.
And yeah, he said that we still have to submit.
Okay.
But we are wrapping that up. It should be within this next week that everything will be resubmitted.
So we're not being held up by the township presently? Is it? No,
No, the township had comments that we have to respond to, but we won't respond until we update all the stormwater for the conservation district too. On page 2, the part 2 permitting to the DEP, we need the stormwater approval before we can submit the part 2 permits. So as soon as we get the approvals, that's a checkbox when you submit the application to the DEP. So we have to wait.
But we don't have to have easements in place for the DEP.
Easements do not need to be in place
For funding.
Right. But leading into the easements, I do have on here tonight that a section talking about the easement design changes. The last we touched on this, we had the binder that was passed around, reviewed, had some meetings. Last updated in February of this year. At the time, there were discussions that there would be an approval of the recommended list that we had gone through, and that approval has not been taken yet. No action's been taken. I would just suggest that the board consider moving forward with that so that we can get started on making those changes. And the ideal timeline would be while the conservation district's reviewing the stormwater permits, we're making those changes prior to submitting to DEP. The first 2 pages attached to my report are the list of properties that, as of February 18, 2019, had been generally recommended through the committee reviews. And then the following page is the list that generally were not recommended for design changes. based on the analysis and
So
review.
you have Grandview listed as varies.
That's because that's lumped in as just Grandview, but there are multiple changes there.
And I see the one property that I was concerned with, it's listed individually. Okay.
And we'll, of course, make sure once we start working on the design changes that all of them are included that we had discussed. But I do have the entire binder that we had reviewed.
It's funny, I see 3 or 4 of those properties listed probably in the last 2 weeks. People have called and asked, where we at? Did you forget about me? Missed some down your direction. Election day, I got a pretty good year.
The last section of my report is just an updated schedule based on where we're at today. I anticipate, like I had discussed earlier, that within the next week that resubmission will be made. We would hope the Conservation District, even though they sent very restrictive comments, they did respond quickly the first time. So I would hope within a couple months they would have comments back to us. As I stated, during that time, it would be good if we could be working on these design changes to get them in final design before permitting to DEP. And then we would hope that we could submit in September to DEP. And if we estimate that they would take about 4 months to review, comment, and respond to comments, then that would take us into early next year. And hopefully we are applying for PennVest in January or February of next year. The only other thing, the last 2 pages of my report are not, I wouldn't say this is all inclusive, but I did my best to generally state the history of where we have been, the actions we've taken, and the timelines. I know there's been some question, so that I just wanted the board to have this. If anybody thinks of anything to add or has any comments on it, we could certainly revise it, but I think it's a good tool to have in the back pocket as to how we got to where we're at.
It's not typical that I comment on the engineer's report, but that's an excellent summary there. I think that would be
I
very
agree.
useful.
I agree. Well done.
I would just like to say, when I look at the approved list, I don't see any issues with it, but when I look to the not recommended, I see like 5 properties on it that I thought we discussed that were doable.
Okay, well, what I would say then is if, you could point them out now, or if you just want to send them to me, and I can go back in the binder and make sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
And they could have easily gotten mixed. And a couple of them were Grandview, and that's where you say in general Grandview, I'm like,
And there are some that the property owner may have one that was on the approved list and one that was also on the not approved list.
okay.
So, yeah, please comment on them and I will verify. I still, like I said, I have the binder that we passed around with notes.
What is this street? It's Allison Avenue, right? Down at the bottom of Wabash, make a left, we go to pump stations, yeah?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we can look at those again. I appreciate the timeline, projected timeline of where we're at. I think that would answer a lot of questions, a lot of people, and we got that tidied up a little better, so that's,
Yeah, absolutely.
hopefully we can make that. With that said, I will mention that our line of credit expires February of 2020. And that's why we're looking up against that February 1 for applying for PennVest. When Brian and I had met with FNB Bank about the line of credit, I'm trying to think, was it 4 months ago, 3 months ago? They were fine with, as long as we were in the application process, in February with Penvest that they might be able to bump it a month or two to make that, but they wanted to make sure that we had funding in line. Otherwise, we have to figure out how to pay that line of credit. So that is my main concern, to try and get that by February of 2020. There, so.
If I could just inquire though, to follow up on the report, is there an intent now to notify the property owners that have asked for changes, to notify those that have been approved and not been approved?
So with that said, I thought where we were at was we were looking at the design. We all went over to your office, looked at them on the big map, and we had ones that were physically and financially able to be done, and we had the ones that couldn't be done through engineering. So that's where the separation list up. From there, I was under the impression that we were going to vote on recommended changes, and that those people would go back to you so that you could change up. Once Brian gets done with the design work, we'd have a new easement for them. The other people that are not recommended, that same easement would go back out to them.
And I think that what we want to do is, you had prepared a document some time back, I recall, Paul, that set forth the criteria that was being used for the review process. I think we would want to incorporate that into the letters that go out, saying that these were the criteria that were used. We certainly don't want anybody to think that it's because of who they are or who they know or anything silly like that, that this was the criteria that was used. And, for the ones that unfortunately it couldn't be accomplished, we're going to be saying that, and the ones that we can, we were able to, under these criteria, grant your request. Now hopefully all those ones will then sign the easement. We can only keep our fingers crossed. But I'm just pointing out that in terms of timelines, this is something that's going to have to occur, much like the other letter once we get the, and it would seem to me that should be occurring before we send out the letter, or at least at the very same time.
About the proposal?
About the appraiser conclusions.
Yeah, I would kind of think that would go out at the same time about, that's my feelings, but, so let's go back to voting on this. I was under the impression that we needed to vote on these changes as a board. Is that still
Yes.
stand, right?
Yes, that was.
So if we're looking at it from a timeline standpoint, let's say that we voted in July, that would still give us enough time to prepare the letter that's going out for the appraisal report.
Yeah, I think the only thing we'd have to be careful to make sure that the people that you're approving them, that they're gonna then get two letters that might be a little bit confusing. We'll have
Okay,
to watch
right.
that. That, that you're going to get a separate letter talking about what happens if you don't sign the agreement, but we're hopeful that you will now that their request has been.
So I guess what I'm saying is I'd be fine to vote tonight if I better understood what these were, but I still have questions. So I don't think we're gonna get all the questions answered tonight, so that means that pushes the vote
Right.
to July.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure out how that's gonna fit.
Well, I think we can still make it work, but we're gonna be doing two, this isn't super extensive, but it's somewhat extensive, projects pretty quickly at that point, because as you point out, there's new drawings that are gonna need to be done. I don't know how long that's gonna take on Brian's end. Then there's a revision to the easements that's gotta be done from my end. And then there's the letters that go along with that, as well as then separately the letters that are going to be going with the appraisal work.
So realistically, if we vote in July on the changes and we get the appraisal in, you would still have to, on these new design changes, develop an easement letter.
Correct.
And those truly should go out before the proposal letter.
I would think so.
Yes.
That you would want to go that out. We can reference, you're going to be receiving in the near future another letter that will address what occurs if you were still unwilling to sign the easement, but in light of the fact, at least on the ones that you're approving, in light of the fact that you were able to meet the criteria.
What is there, 4 or 5 that's holding up the
I'd
decision?
say about 5 that I see.
Is there a way we could sort those 5 out and approve the rest of them? That way we could move forward on them? You know, I mean, these letters need to get out before.
And I
Right.
agree. I just don't want to vote on something I'm going to regret later on and
Yeah.
saying these 5 properties should have been over there on that first list.
Where I'm just a little confused is why the ones that we approve, can't we just scrub them from the list that goes out here and just send them a separate letter and say, you've been approved, we are working on the changes, and then just scrub them from the list that gets sent out about the eminent domain?
Well, we could accept that that presumes that they're still gonna sign it even though we've met their request. I mean, I hate,
That's true.
That's
too.
true.
I hate
Yeah.
to-
Yeah, I mean, that's right.
I hate to ascribe bad motives to anyone, but, you know, there may be people that came in and made those requests but still have no intention of signing. They were just looking for something else to put into their quiver, you know, if you will.
So what is your position, Eric, on us discussing these properties in public meeting, or should we do it in executive session?
I think until we have notified the owners and we see their positions, this remains an executive session matter because of potential litigation and acquisition
agree.
of property. So if you want to address those few in an quick executive session here tonight, that's fine. If you would prefer to
That's fine.
wait, that's fine too. I'm just pointing out that we may be stepping on 2 different timelines here.
I agree. So my feeling is if we can go to an executive session this evening, we kind of hash out through which ones Brian needs a check. I don't think we're gonna be able to vote on them tonight, but at least
Be
he
ready
has-
to next
yeah,
month.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my feelings.
And in the meantime, the ones that are on the approved list, do you want to at least authorize Brian to start redoing those drawings? Because you're going to need to do that one way or another.
Those drawings are gonna take a little while.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Makes
Get that
sense.
part of it
Yeah.
started so that then next month when you vote on it, maybe that'll be done or close to done, and then they can get to me and I can jump on my part of it.
So-
Does that sound, I
Here-
mean, if I'm saying anything that isn't workable, you just
I
take it up.
don't, no, it all sounds good. I don't know that we would have all those done by
Right.
next month's meeting.
That's the point though, let's get
Right, but
started.
at least get started.
But you guys have to authorize
Because
that.
like one of the big ones is Brown's Apple Orchard,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
and it's on the approved list, but,
Right, yeah, I see.
you know, if we can get you moving on, I'm fine with that too. I mean, I have no objection with what's on the recommended list, it's the non-recommended that I like.
Well, why don't you then entertain in your new business, I guess it would be, a motion to authorize KOH to begin the revisions to the drawings as on the approved list that they have supplied tonight. And then final action on whether there will be any others that get on that list and what to do with the remainder can be addressed next month.
Okay. That satisfies me.
Yeah, it makes sense, I think.
Yeah. No, I don't want to hold Brian up, at the same time, it's like I keep looking at this timeline, the clock keeps ticking.
Yeah, and I'm trying to keep it moving, is what I'm trying to do, because I know you've got that deadline.
Yeah.
In February, we all do,
And mistakes are made when we move quickly,
right?
but at the same time, I want to make sure that what we're voting on, we understand.
Do what you can do now and worry about what you
Yep.
can't necessarily do later.
So you good, Brian?
yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Is there a motion to accept the engineer's report?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Wayne? None?
He's already overwhelmed by that.
We'll move into old business. We still have one seat open on our boards. Appreciate any support, anyone wanting to serve. We touched on the update on the letter of easement to the non-signers, which is still kind of coming along, but there's other things in place.
Yeah, and we'll probably have to revise that a little bit, based on what we get out of the appraisers, but we already have something roughed out at least.
Third thing was the appraisal progress, which we had a pretty good report on that tonight, so that's looking good. Anything else under old business?
I just want to bring up the audit.
Okay.
I talked to Sherry about the audit. She had made contact with Houston and Associates, and they never returned her calls or emails. I called down there and I asked them what was going on. They said they've been busy.
Did they send us out an engagement letter?
Well, you know, I wasn't at the meeting when it was approved. I know you were in contact with, I've never seen an engagement
Yeah, I've
letter.
never seen an engagement letter. I know
I
that.
haven't either. Ever since you did that, they've never sent anything. You've not, well, obviously they haven't started that.
I will
Audit, so
call
you
her and
haven't
ask
paid
her
them
about an
anything.
engagement letter. I thought that was, I wasn't here the night that was approved. I just assumed that the engagement letter was here, or that's why it moved forward whenever.
I have to look into that.
I mean, well, I can call her. and
Okay,
tell her what's
okay.
going on. Did she call you? She said she would.
Yeah, she finally did today.
I mean, I thought that was kind of
Well,
strange.
Strange isn't even the word, because she called me and she goes, how can I help you?
You mean without hardly identifying
Like,
who she
what,
was?
what do you mean, how?
And we haven't submitted anything, right?
No.
Yeah.
What's
No.
that?
I have invoices and everything
Okay.
here, which was my question. Do you want them to take to her, or do you want me to just take them to her? What?
Oh, I
Because that's,
can get them to her. I actually thought everything was
We
okay.
could mention that.
I thought everything you said.
other than the invoices can't be, they actually need the hard copy files for
Okay.
the invoices, the bank statements and things like that.
I will.
I have the other things that I can send electronically, but she was like, it was just that question, she went, well, how can I help you? Well,
Did she identify who she was?
I was like,
It's
well,
Nicole.
well, I sent you an email and said, how would you like to proceed? What do you want from me? What, you know, like, my
Yeah.
auditors, I get an email from her and there's an outline. Can you send me da-da-da-da-da? Can you have ready? And I just have it ready in my office.
Yeah, that is.
I was lost.
The only thing that maybe somehow the ball got dropped was, you said that Kathy Houston called you or emailed you or whatever.
Well, this is January of 2019, this from them, but I don't have an engagement letter in it. I'm just kind of reusing this envelope, and that's what I'm wondering what, let me go back here for a second.
While he's checking on that area, do you have Scott Churchill's contact number?
Yeah, and he sent an email today that you would have received
You know
too.
what, I do remember.
Just by the way, he sent one to everyone, because I gave him everyone's email.
Yeah,
address.
also-
Here, I have it, I think.
Go back to our minutes, I remember reading the minutes
So
and it
weird
was,
getting this
it
email.
was a lot more money than what it had. It was like $4,000.
For Churchill REA, real estate. Churchill.
It changed it, huh?
Well, no, that's his.
Oh, that is.
Churchill REA.
Oh, okay, it looks very similar.
Yeah, I was like, what? I thought it was.
I have it on his document. Peter does,
Don?
has his, but not Scott.
What are you looking for?
Scott's phone number.
Let me see if it's in his email.
Is it in his email?
Yes.
There you go.
His cell is 412.
I said, because of
606.
having all this, I took all my other minutes out and I have them in the other folder.
05.
So this is from a February meeting,
Okay.
audit engagement letter,
Thank
yes,
you.
sign it and send. And I did
I was
that.
thinking-
Okay, so they should have it.
Don't
Okay,
anyone
all right.
pay attention.
Well, like
I
said,
just don't have a copy here in front of me.
I wasn't here,
So many people
but,
talk.
well, I remembered you were here, but I kind of just forgot about it.
Online don't have a copy, it's another story, but.
Okay, well, at least I know
Well, I'm
it's
getting
on.
on it. Was
I'll
that-
call her tomorrow and try to,
Yeah, I definitely did send one.
when you, after you told her what was going on,
She just said, have somebody or yourself or whoever bring me
Drop
the,
it off.
drops the stuff off, and then she sent me an email with the additional information that she needed.
So the notes say we signed it in February and sent the engagement letter.
Sent the engagement letter.
Yeah, she.
Yeah, there's just
Matter of
problems
fact,
between
it's
tax
two
seasons are
extra
ending, and then
I
they're
don't
the only
understand
game
this
in
is your
town
busy
anymore
time,
that
but
does those.
for your client.
They're probably
Yeah.
super
So
busy.
much
Yeah,
difference.
I'm sure.
So, yeah.
Hey,
But,
he
you
was
know,
able to check
no
and
excuse for
confirm that parcel
non-return
number
calls.
that we were worried about is correct.
The 200.
Yeah.
It's,
And no response, and no response.
460-009. 00
Yeah,
00
she could have said,
Yeah.
hey, we're busy, I'll get
0022.
you.
Mhm.
Period.
Two.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, well, that's the only thing I had, so I will look into that tomorrow, take care of this, and move forward with the audit.
All right.
But that is strange, the way they did drop the ball there, because
Right.
Sherry had contacted them 3 times, just with emails, and never ever got back to her.
Yeah, they always ask me for a letter every year, and I haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
So they're just not getting to it for whatever
The
reason.
solicitor's opinion on that.
That engagement, well, I don't know what, I can't remember it. I won't even get into that.
Okay. Any other old business? No. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Approved bills to be paid.
Okay, one moment. I've got 2 invoices from KLH, $400, which is their retainers, and Sherry Crawford's is the $170.29 for doing her work here. And our retainer for YCNL for $400, which is a total of $970.29. Let me just add this. Is Mr. Churchill, does he need a check? Is that what's going on?
Yes, he's gonna send an invoice to Sherry, and it's going to be consistent with the agreements that Paul's gonna sign. But you've already voted to
Approve.
approve that at your prior meeting, so you're okay on it. It's
Okay.
just that when he sends it,
I was
Paul.
wondering about that too.
Yeah, we need to get
Remember,
that
you
out.
moved,
Yeah.
remember you moved money last month to
Yes.
make sure you had it for that.
Right.
Right.
That's
It's
why we
still
moved
there.
10,000.
Exactly, and the only reason it didn't get to them is because they had to correct the agreements because of those minor errors in there.
Okay.
So,
So is
they
to-
started to work even without their retainer is basically what happened.
Well, to keep from waiting till next month, is there a way that we could take care of that?
You could authorize Sherry to issue the checks upon receipt of the invoices. You've already approved the
Okay.
payment of it.
All right, well, is that a motion I need to make?
I don't think you need to make that. You've
Okay,
already
we already
approved this
made it.
payment.
Approve the
Have an
contract.
understanding.
She's just waiting for the
Right.
documentation to issue
Okay.
what you've already approved.
Good.
Okay. All
Right? You okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay. As long as you're okay with it, then,
I'm okay with that.
okay.
So like, we can make the check, I'd have him sign
I'll
it,
sign
and then
it.
when I get the
Yeah.
invoicing for it, and you can sign the agreement, then I'll mail
Yep.
it.
Okay,
Yeah, they're-
very good. That way he don't have to wait until that month.
Right, I think that since they've already started to work, it would be only fair to.
Absolutely.
Is there a motion to approve the bills to be paid for $970.29?
I'll make a motion, we approve those bills to be paid.
Is
In
there,
that amount.
I will second.
we got a second? Any further questions?
No, other than we don't need to transfer money.
There you go. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. So we don't need to transfer there to go, George, right? That was done, motion. So we need to make a motion to authorize KLH, if anyone would like to make that motion.
Should- Somebody else probably ought to do it. I scratched some paper down.
I'll make a motion to authorize KLH to move forward with design changes on the recommended design changes that we are have on that paper, on that sheet that you submitted. Is there a second?
I'll second that one.
Any further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any other new business?
Got a couple things I'd like to bring up. First things first, is anybody any good at writing letters that we can solicit money for donations from like the Meadows? Or even Mark West for funding? If
There
we
had
get-
been an effort in the past to get funding out of Mark West. Even the suggestion that ultimately the sewage lines could be extended to his properties. And my recollection is it was pretty much just ignored.
So to bring up to speed on it, down at the main plant, they have holding tanks.
Yeah.
We tried to talk to them about if we extended the line down to the VOTEC school, that would include their plant, the fire school, and all the way down that way there. This is early on. And they said, nope, we are going to keep the holding tanks.
Okay, I didn't know.
Now, management has changed, the name of the company has changed. It's now owned by Marathon, but that's where we were at the time, we're asking them. But now they have property in that area too. So. I don't know.
All right,
And honestly, there was requests, had conversations with people from Range about it. Range will not make a donation to a capital project like this. They will give you money towards a piece of equipment, possibly a building, but it's not for infrastructure projects.
that was one.
Yeah. At the
Would there-
time,
would there be a harm in Rich inquiring with Marathon
you may.
now, if you wish
I'll
to?
see if I can find
try
out
that?
who's your contact.
There's no problem with that, is there?
Oh, there's no problem. You can get somebody to throw money into the project. That's always great.
At the time, we were calling it the bake sale project.
Bake sale project.
Yeah, let's have a bake sale, get some donations.
Yeah, yeah.
But we didn't sell many cupcakes. But it's a good idea. I mean, if we can get them involved, it'd be lovely.
So just a thought.
Yeah.
Because I also heard you can solicit from like the Meadows. Even 10 grand wouldn't hurt us.
I'd take $2
Nothing
grand.
would
would
hurt.
help.
Yeah. But again, I knew no one at the Meadows to even where to begin. And just to say to the Meadows is probably going to turn around and say, we pay our local share account of the 12 million of whatever it might be each year, then we have a right to go to the local share account and apply for funding or a grant from them. We've been there once, well, actually, we've been there twice, we got one grant. That money is not really designed or purposed for design work.
Okay.
Once we get past design and we have a need for a new pickup truck or a pump or something, they'll look at you and they'll talk to you. But right now, under design, so I would just assume that the Meadows is gonna point towards the courthouse.
I'll let them on there.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up one other thing. About 20 to 25 years ago, I'm just guessing, 3 people from Weston actually acquired about putting a park in. All 3 have been passed away. Harvey Elder, Dave Fry, James Harris. But actually, this is the same property that we're looking at taking from Nate. How do we find out whatever happened to the property? Because I understood that the civil engineers came in and found out it was a wetland.
That's
That's
exactly
what
what
stopped the park.
It was actually
It is
supposed to be a baseball field, so it was gonna take up a large area,
Right.
and that's when
They stopped it, so then they were never granted the property.
Well,
I mean,
that's
where
right,
the
the
park
Nagy's
is.
still on it, right?
Nagy still owns it,
Nagy's
yes.
on it.
I'm not following you what you mean by granting the property.
Actually, I was pretty sure that they were granted the property before the civil engineers came in.
Did Nagy's own it at the time?
I do not know. How do we
Yeah.
find this out?
Title searches.
Well, yeah, you could get a title search done to see when the property was sold. to them. I do recall briefly that the last recorded document on that probably was around 20-some years ago, because it was I remember the amount being relatively modest that was paid for it. Now, what happened, who owned the property before that would require some sort of a title search to be conducted.
Okay. I just
Yeah.
trying to follow a lead. Because if they already owned, if the township already owned it,
Well, they don't own it now, so whether they owned it at one point or another really is irrelevant right now.
It was sold
Right.
to them on July 1st of 2001 for $65,000.
So about 20 years ago, yeah.
And I would say it was probably longer than that.
65,000.
wow, oh,
It was longer than that, maybe more than 25 years ago, I think, that they were trying to do the ball field. I'm gonna say, yeah, because son's 36, he was probably 6, so I'd say 30 years ago. Yeah, in that neighborhood, but still.
I mean, if you thought the cost justified it, you could get a title search for a few $100s, but I'm not sure what you're gonna learn out of there that's of true value at this point. They own it now, that's who we gotta deal with.
okay.
Anything else?
No, that was 2 points I wanted to bring up.
Good points.
Good point, yeah.
So if there's no other new business,